hosted by Verona Young Voters in cooperation with the League of Women Voters of the Montclair area. My name is Madrid Rodner. I'm a senior and I will be attending American University this fall for political science. I will be the technical host for tonight.
And my name is Gabe Breitenbach. I'm a senior and the founder of the VHS Philosophy Club, and I'll be tonight's timekeeper.
Verona Young Voters, or VIV for short, was started by myself and Audrey Ung as a nonpartisan advocacy group to increase young people's knowledge and participation in our community's governance. VIV's mission is to ensure that the voices of Verona's youth are brought to the forefront of local politics.
We are bringing this forum to you to represent our youth in this election. So 3 of our 5 questions tonight will be based on the results from our Verona's Youth Interest Survey, to which we received 61 responses. So in this survey, we asked students what issue areas they care most about on the local and national levels. Additionally, we asked about students' familiarity with Verona's current council members and government system, as well as how much they believe the government addresses youth interests. So as you can see from these results, Verona's youth are not nearly as familiar nor involved with local government in the community as they can and should be.
VIV is dedicated to representing Verona's youth and encouraging involvement in the community. As such, we are pleased to bring you the first ever youth-led forum in Verona's history, with the gracious help of the League of Women Voters. To guarantee impartiality, our moderators will be Verona High School students who will not be of voting age this election cycle. Please remember, the 2021 municipal election is on Tuesday, May 11th. For all voting information, please visit the link that will be sent in the, or will be the link bit.ly/Verona-2021 election. This PDF was created by Municipal Clerk Jennifer Kiernan and includes how to vote, polling locations, and how to apply for a mail-in ballot.
Finally, we ask that all candidates keep your mics muted if you don't have the floor. If a viewer at home has a question for all 5 of the candidates, please feel free to put them in the chat and we can rephrase them for clarity's sake. Towards the end of the forum, we're going to ask some of the audience questions to the candidates.
We will ask the candidates questions in a randomized order that will rotate throughout the forum. The initial order for tonight will be first, Ms. Cynthia Holland, second, Dr. Christopher Tamburo, third, Mr. Jack McAvoy, fourth, Mr. Jason Heidemann, and fifth, Mr. Michael Malcolmson.
And now tonight's moderators, Audrey Ung and Evan Bannon.
Hello, everyone. I'm Evan Bannon. I'm a junior at VHS and I'm on the soccer, swimming, and track teams. I will be moderating first tonight. First, the candidates will each have a minute for opening statements. After opening statements, I will start with our first question of the night. Candidates' responses will be capped at 1 minute and 30 seconds. When there are 30 seconds left for each candidate, Gabe, our timekeeper, will turn on a green light as he will now demonstrate. When the time is up, Gabe will turn on a red light, after which either Audrey or I will stop the candidate.
Hi everyone, I'm Audrey Young. I'm a senior at VHS, the co-founder of VIV, and I'll be going to Rutgers this fall for psychology and economics. I'll be the second moderator of the night. As Gabe mentioned earlier, we have... Oh, crap. Let's go. How about now? Awesome. Okay, sorry about that. Hi, everyone. I'll start over. My name is Audrey Ung. I am the co-founder of VIV, a senior at VHS, and I'll be going to Rutgers University in the fall for economics and psychology. I'll be the second moderator of the night, and as Gabe mentioned earlier, we have 5 prepared questions for the candidates, and the order will rotate after each question. At the end of our questions, the floor will be open to audience questions, of which we have already received a few, so thank you so much for everyone who submitted questions. Our technical host, Madrid, will announce those questions, and Evan and I will continue moderating. Responses to audience questions are capped at 1 minute each.
The forum will end around 8:30 after closing statements from each of the candidates. Just like opening statements and audience questions, these will be capped at 1 minute. We will now begin with opening statements, starting with Ms. Cynthia Holland.
Thank you, Viv and the LWV. My name is Cynthia Holland. I'm a mom and an environmental and utility attorney. Over the last 15 years, I've served under 3 governors. I've worked on 4 statewide energy master plans, and I've defended billion-dollar budgets. I'm offering experienced leadership for a better Verona, and I believe we can achieve this by first planning for our future. That's updating our municipal master plan, undertaking asset management planning for our utility infrastructure, and designing community energy plans. I believe second, we can move forward with sustainable action. That's ensuring that our ordinances are consistent with an environmentally sustainable energy master plan, that our asset management decisions, like whether we repair and invest in our aging infrastructure, are sound and based on planning, and that we can take advantage of federal and state funding for community energy, for clean energy through community energy planning. Third, I believe we can strengthen.
That's the end of the time. Thank you for your response. Moving on to Dr. Christopher Tambiero. You're still muted, Dr. Tambiero.
Thanks, Evan. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, especially attending a forum run by our youth. I'm incredibly proud of you guys, especially that you're a group that is generally underrepresented in municipal government, and your survey results definitely demonstrate that you feel that way. So it's important to engage you like it is to engage every citizen in Verona as we make policy and plans for the future of our town. As an educator, as a rescue squad member, I have interacted with a lot of youth and have really had the opportunity to gain your insightful feedback and see what you can do. You guys challenge me to be a better educator. I know that you'll challenge me to be a better councilman. As a councilman, my promise to you and to everybody here is that we will include you in our strategic planning, where we engage in meaningful planning for the future, so that all opinions and all views can be considered as we make plans for the future of the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, Dr. Tambiero. Now moving on to Mr. Jack McAvoy.
Good evening, and thanks to our young voters for taking an active role in our election and hosting this forum. My name is Jack McAvoy, and I am a lifelong resident. I'm a licensed home inspector who became active in Verona government about 10 years ago when an ill-suited development was proposed. It informed me that Verona was severely lacking in ordinances that protect our environment. So after 6 years of attending meetings, I ran for office in 2017, and I'm currently serving as your mayor. During my term as mayor, a meaningful tree preservation ordinance and a new stormwater management ordinance have passed. I want to repair and replace our aging infrastructure and keep Verona green and sustainable for our future generations, for all of you. Verona is an open, welcoming, and inclusive community, but we can do better, and I think I can help. I was the first mayor to fly the rainbow flag. I marched in the Rally for Justice. I have strongly represented in my words and actions that Verona will not tolerate hate, discrimination, or bias. I look forward to your questions, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McAvoy. We will now be moving on to Mr. Jason Heineman.
Thank you, Verona Young Voters and Montclair League of Women Voters. My name is Jason Heineman. I'm a landing dad, a member of the Verona Planning Board, and a land use and redevelopment attorney. When my wife Jean and I moved here 4 years ago, we fell in love with Verona's small town charm and warm community. We knew Verona was the ideal place to raise our kids, Abby and Jax, and to one day make memories with future grandkids. Volunteering is a core value for Gina and I. That's why Gina is a landing class parent and a volunteer advocate for foster children. That's why I joined the planning board, and that's why I'm running for council. I believe our council functions best when each member brings their unique experiences and perspective to collaboratively address major issues. Current issues, like our expiring master plan and state mandates for affordable housing, will have a lasting impact on future generations. I want to make sure Verona residents have control in the decision-making process and not connected redevelopers. I want our town to take on greener practices, to be safer for walking and biking, and to be supportive of our local businesses. I've got the skill set to move Verona forward in a smart, strategic, and environmentally sustainable way. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, Mr. Heineman. Now moving on to Mr. Michael Knockamson.
Thank you, young voters and the women of Montclair. I am Michael Knockimson, and the past year has been very challenging for all of us, especially in our beloved community of Verona. We all know someone who has either gotten the virus or worse, lost a loved one to it. Our children have been forced to learn remotely and miss out on athletics and other extracurricular events and activities. Our downtown business district has been ravaged by shutdowns and limitations, leaving many business owners barely hanging on. As we work to recover from the pandemic, reopening our schools and businesses, we need a plan to bring back downtown Verona and make Verona a better place for all. Having previously served on the council for 8 years and living in this community for over 20 with my lovely wife and 2 daughters, I know my experience, my ideas, my energy, my commitment to our community best prepares me to serve the residents and businesses of Verona once again. Remember, the homeowners and downtown businesses are the heart of the Verona soul.
Thank you, Mr. Knockimson. We'll now be moving on to our opening question, which Dr. Timbiera will be answering first. What do you think are the most important issues on the mind of Verona's young voters, and how might you address them?
That's a great question, Evan. Thank you. So the 3 that I think I would classify on the minds of young voters at this point are social justice, sustainability, and representation in government. So as a rescue squad member, as an educator, I've been promoting social justice by serving the community. Education is the great equalizer. And I would hope that the council would do whatever it can to support our school system and our individual participants in that. We can be exemplars for having productive discussions and by having open and transparent government, which means that people can approach and access, like one of the founders of the organization has spoken to our police chief and asked great questions. And we've seen that. We have a phenomenal resource there in order to provide that information. As far as sustainability, Verona can engage and continue to engage in environmentally sustainable and friendly practices. We can make sure that our infrastructure is there for when you all are moving in here and buying homes. We can really plan for the future through strategic planning. As far as your representation, I want to include all groups in Verona, whether you're youth, seniors, homeowners, renters, people with children, to get involved proactively in creating a plan for the government of Verona to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our community members. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Timbiera. Next, we will have answers from Mr. McAvoy.
Thank you. What's important to our young voters, in my mind, it might be similar to when I was your age. You're all worried about your future. What college are you going to go to? I would think college costs. Do you need loans to go to college? How much debt you're going to have when you come out of college? Even the future of healthcare, what the healthcare costs are. I myself in my 20s went several years without healthcare because I couldn't afford it. What career prospects are on the horizon in the future, or even right now? What jobs are out there? So another thing, present day, I was listening last year at the Rally for Justice. I agree with Dr. Tambora, social justice. Young voters are concerned about their social experience in school and incidents of discrimination, hate, and bias. I think we need to communicate more with the school district. I think overall, the general communication should be extended and we should do better. The town council needs to address these issues publicly and bring them to light. I think the council can, through our manager, talk to the police and extend further programs to maybe combat against these unfortunate occurrences. The police department is needed. I don't want to put everything on them, but we have to stand up and defend the victims. And I think that's what we need to do, and the police can help us. So perhaps making a point will further engage parents to discuss these issues with their children, even maybe to affect better change for the whole community. I mean, we need to look at this and see what's happening in Verona and Only then can the community act together to affect better change. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. McAvoy. Next, we will have Mr. Hyndman.
Thank you. So thinking about what is important for young voters, we have to remember that young voters aren't a monolith. And that's why it's important for young voters like yourselves to get involved in this democratic process, making your voices heard. Drawing on my own experiences, starting my career in the midst of a recession and a state government hiring freeze, and then having a key career milestone swallowed by the global pandemic, I believe that the disruption and economic uncertainty of this pandemic is a major concern of young voters who are approaching key transitions in their lives. Mayor McAvoy touched on that, going to college, but also starting your job. So again, planning for your future is a major concern. And as elected leaders and officials, in all positions of government, we should be particularly sensitive to the disproportionate impact that this pandemic has had on young people, both from a social justice perspective, but also an economic justice perspective. Going beyond my own experiences and looking at areas where young people are leading, I also believe the fight against climate change and the push for environmental sustainability is a major issue. It's a problem that you inherited, but will disproportionately impact your lives. That's why it's our responsibility as council members to plan and implement long-term policies that will leave your generation with a sustainable environment, infrastructure, and economy. At the local level, it starts with the master plan, followed by infrastructure planning, zoning and regulatory reform, and sound oversight. Superficial strategies for a 4-year election cycle aren't going to cut it. We've got to think in terms of decades.
Thank you, Mr. Hyndman. Next, we will have Mr. Nachumson.
Thank you. My approach is a little different. I believe having children of the college age and high school age, that our kids really want to just get back to normal. We've had a year and 2 months right now cooped up, and I think most of Verona wants to return to the ordinary, which is so precious, and allowing kids to roam downtown, ride their bikes, walk the streets, visit our park, socialize, visit friends, and clear their minds and be prepared for the upcoming summer and ultimately going to college. But normal social activity is clearly solves a lot of the problems and allows kids to socialize, interact, deal with crises, solve problems. And my goal is really to open up the downtown, allow families and friends to visit restaurants, socialize, congregate in our town square. I plan to remake the town square. We want to light it up magically at night, allow for people to hang out, sit on benches, collaborate, meet, walk, ride, and just enjoy our township. We have a beautiful township. There is so much to offer. And I think we really need to focus on, again, I always talk about the normal and how the normal is so precious. Those are the things I think that give you the qualities and the skills to move on, because life happens with people. Everything happens with communication, and our children really need to return to normal and feel like they can get out and visit friends. And I think we're on the cusp of that happening. This summer should be awesome.
Mr. Nachumson, your time's up. Thank you.
And I believe that everyone will return to normal shortly. Thank you.
Ms. Cynthia Holland.
Thanks. I have to say, when your whole life is in front of you, that the major issues are all going to be future focused. So whether you cite concerns about climate change, economic recovery, equity, social justice, or educational and career prospects, they're all going to be oriented toward a better future for yourselves, your families, and everyone. And to have the future we want, we have to start taking action now and planning for it. So you plan to address current issues against a wider backdrop of incremental change over time. So from here, you have an opportunity to develop solutions for the short and long term that mutually reinforce each other in really positive ways. And I've done this work at the statewide level, and I'd really like to do the same thing here in Verona. for our environmental and our energy future, but also the variety of issues that are presented to Verona and to the young voters here. I think we can do this. And if we want a better Verona for our future, then we have to plan for it, because ultimately, if you have a goal without a plan, it's just a wish. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holland. We will now be moving on to our first question based off of the Verona, the survey that we took for the youth. This question will be first directed towards Mr. McAvoy. What policies regarding mental health and addiction services would you support or want to implement in Verona?
Policies towards mental health and addiction. I truly believe that policies from the council are very difficult for mental health and addiction. I know the council would be more than willing to do whatever it is possible to help anyone in need. We do have a health director in Verona who runs that department that people can go to if they're in need of help. There are many other services around that department can direct them towards. But as far as policies related to mental health, I think that's outside the purview of the town council. And I do think that if someone had an idea of what the council could do to help, we would be more than happy and open to help out in any way possible. But as far as what we can do directly, I think it would have to be done through the health department, because you have to look at HIPAA laws and not divulge, there's privacy issues that go with most of those issues. So that's really all. Thank you. Done with that.
Thank you, Mr. McAvoy. Mr. Hyndman, your response?
So thank you. That's a great question. And as someone who has had to deal with family members that have mental health concerns and had gone through mental health crises, I'm familiar with how, those situations interact on a local and county level. And there actually is a lot that we can do on a local level in conjunction with the county. Unfortunately, we don't get enough support from the state and federal government for our mental health services, but again, we can help bridge the gap. Often the first responders for mental health crises are our police department. And I've had this conversation with Chief Kiernan, who is, this is on the forefront of his mind. He's doing a great job in terms of mental health training for his officers, because they are often the first responders. So I would continue to support training and services for our police, since they are the first responders for most mental health crises. There's also the issue of follow-up after that initial interaction, that first 5, 10, 20 minutes. Our officers need to have a point of contact with county health services. So we need a better system of coordinating, whether that be through a municipal social worker or liaison, that they could take over those situations and direct residents or people in crisis to the services that are available on the county and state level, because often we need that local point of contact beyond that first interaction with police, so that we can get through not just the crisis, but the aftercare.
Thank you, Mr. Hyndman. Mr. Nachumson, your response.
So in my experience, I think mental health these days is something that everyone experiences at different degrees. I know that Verona's always done a nice job and can do a better job. They have groups called VMAC, the police department, we have the rescue squad, but we need to have maybe more seminars. We have to eliminate the stigma of mental health and bring it out more in public, to engage in having professionals talk to the community and not feel like attending these meetings leaves you with a stigma, or that you're unusual, that you may need, some advice. But mental health is critical for everyone. Not everyone has a great day each day, and we have to continue to push on. But we do have plenty of professionals in the community who are willing to volunteer time. We have seminars. Again, VMAC has hosted a number of these seminars in collaboration with our police department and Chief Kiernan. And I think we have plenty of areas within the high school and the middle school with the nurses so that we can bring the community together and have seminars on a monthly basis and engage our nurses and some of our mental health professionals who are employed by the town to be more involved in the overall program that we roll out to the community. So again, programming and focusing on this subject, I think we do that. We can do a better job at it and just allow it to evolve. But I think we all can learn a lot about mental health, and it helps us with our children, and it helps us with just coping with situations at work.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolmson.
Thank you.
Ms. Cynthia Holland, your response.
Thank you. This is an excellent question. And fundamentally, your government is here to serve you. So when we're dealing with mental health and addiction challenges, I really think it's important to look at the fact that the pandemic has made public health and public health issues at the forefront of your government. And so we've been engaged in this. And I think in continuing to engage in these things is a big part of community resilience. And so, yes, we do have existing services like VMAC, but I think you need to look at it at a whole community level. So engaging your SCAs, engaging the SACs at your schools, those are ways that the community can engage together. When you look at the public health forum that we had, it was multi-jurisdictional, and it really leveraged the skills and expertise across these different jurisdictions at our local level, but also engaged our community, because we do have a lot of community expertise. A lot of mental health officials live here in town. And by having an active community dialogue about these issues, we can really engage in them. The VPD is an excellent resource, as well as our volunteers in the rescue squad and the fire department. And it's very important to continue to engage those active volunteers in particular, because they bring something too. They're often going to be the first responders on a call, and they're going to be the ones helping that individual in that first instance deal with either the addiction issue or the mental health issue. And so those are ways that I think we can help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holland. And finally, we will hear from Dr. Timbiera.
Thank you. This is a great question. As somebody who has been on the front lines of working with this, I first really want to thank the members of the Verona Police Department who do a phenomenal job in handling mental health emergencies within the township. The police officers are our first responders. They do more and go above and beyond with every person, treating them as an individual, showing compassion, being incredibly helpful, showing patience. Our police deploy Narcan and save people who have suffered overdoses. They work with screeners from local hospitals to get help, and will stay at homes for hours if they have to in order to make sure that everybody's taken care of. So whatever we can do to support the police department in more training that officers want, through budget, through policy, through setting an example, is phenomenal. Lieutenant Watkins from the police department recently conducted a class with the Verona Rescue Squad on de-escalation techniques. So we already have the cross-agency collaboration, which has been helping. I'd like to promote more of that. As part of our special operations unit on the rescue squad, we've been talking about mental health first aid, which the town can support. And in addition, by bringing the awareness to this, we can work with the League of Municipalities. We can do public-private partnerships with local hospitals to ensure that there are enough screeners out there, and use the influence of the council to do better in this area.
Thank you, Dr. Timbiera. We'll now be moving on to our second survey-based question, and Mr. Heineman will be answering this first. What policies regarding sustainability and climate change would you support or want to implement in Verona?
Thank you. So from a local perspective, in terms of climate sustainability, I think it starts with our zoning. We need to zone for a more walkable, less car dependent community, a community where we don't just live, but we also work and recreate. That limits vehicle travel, and that starts with our master planning process. We also need to look, and I think it was touched on previously, you know, our tree ordinances, our stormwater management, we've passed those in the past. We need to build on those. We need to look at our built environment and transitioning away from fossil fuels to more electrification in our building design, as well as our municipal facilities. That's a major factor in terms of climate change, and it's a cost saver in the long run. As we electrify, we save money on energy costs, and we save money in terms of other externalities that we end up paying for in the long run in terms of health, noise, nuisance. So these are all long-term solutions that address not just the climate, but our health and our economy. So those are the policy initiatives that I would seek to implement if elected council.
Thank you, Mr. Hyman. Mr. Knockomson, your response.
Thank you. So as far as sustainability, I believe Verona's done a great job gradually moving into the green space over the years. They were one of the first in the community to put up solar. They've added solar where it makes sense. Just as I was leaving the council, we had a partnership with PSE&G as far as adding 4 charging stations in town, and I believe that will continue. I'm talking about putting big belly garbage cans as we remake the downtown, which are solar garbage cans that are compactors. We're also talking about, and we did the Verona Community Garden. Originally, that was supposed to happen across the street from the high school. It's now at the middle school, but those are great steps forward. I know the council over the years has acquired land and turned it into green acres land to preserve that for the future of the community and open space. That also falls under sustainability. I know in the future they'll be looking at possibly making the pool totally self-reliant on solar and to get off the electric grid. And the same thing they hope to do, and I would like to be part of that when we do that at this water sewer treatment plant, because that has a lot of electricity use. But I can tell you, we talk about sustainability, but at the town level, Verona's done a wonderful job. But if we rebuild our downtown and we allow for people to operate and shop and eat and enjoy our downtown, that's less traffic in the cars, it's
Thank you,
more
Mr.
foot
Knockomson.
walking, and it's very good for our community and our businesses and the
Thank you, Mr.
environment.
Knockomson. Your
So
time is
thank you.
concluded. Ms. Cynthia Holland, your response.
Thank you. First, I'd like to recognize that tomorrow's Earth Day. And I'd also like to say that I'm really proud that I contributed to drafting New Jersey's Energy Master Plan, as well as DEP's Global Warming Response Report, because both of those documents are key statewide initiatives for combating climate change. And when I was the chair of the Sustainable and Resilient Infrastructure Work Group for the Energy Master Plan, we spoke at the League of Municipalities because there is a tremendous amount of action that can be done at the local level to really build that foundation for combating climate change. So first, you do it through planning. You have the municipal master plan that is required to address climate change vulnerabilities. You also look at your infrastructure. If you have leaking water pipes, you're not only wasting that water, but you're spending money running pumps and contributing to carbon emissions as a result. That is inefficient. That is contributing to climate change. You can also implement community energy plans, which are a holistic approach that doesn't just look at your municipal buildings. It looks at your businesses, your residents, and your schools, and it tries to leverage the different mechanisms available to ensure that solar on a municipal building could be used for your schools to save money there. You could do things where you're enhancing electric vehicle charging stations and others. It is a broad opportunity at the community level to really engage these different sectors. And there's funding available from the federal and state governments, which is an opportunity for Verona to engage in this to become more sustainable and ensure a brighter future for you. And that's what I'd like to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Dr. Timbura, your response.
Thank you. So the first thing I would like to do is ensure that Verona is a very walkable town. And I think we have done a lot toward that already. This summer, I walked every street in Verona, at least once and multiple times with my dog Radar. And I've tripped over every sidewalk crack and seen where is walkable and where is not. So I would like to make sure that we do that to encourage people instead of maybe driving to dinner to walk and enjoy that. I'd like to also ensure that any ordinances that we have for development, any plans, ensure that the environment is looked after, that we are also making sure that any development is smart in that way. We need to make sure that we preserve open space. And as somebody who grew up in a small town that had a lot of open space, I think this is very important. And having that green area is great. And then upgrading our infrastructure. The more we upgrade our infrastructure, the less power pulling it is, which is fantastic. We can look at fuel efficient vehicles for some of our municipal departments. But what this really comes down to is doing really solid strategic planning and getting experts in. I'm not an expert in sustainability. However, I know to trust people who are. So as part of our strategic planning, have a committee that works on that makes recommendations for the next 5 years, the next 10 years and beyond. So we're not dealing in the present. In addition, we can engage in public-private partnerships with companies like Honeywell, who will come out, assess our buildings, make recommendations, and help us invest in infrastructure.
Mr. McAvoy, your response.
Yes, I will say we've taken very good steps towards sustainability, and I hope we continue down this path. We just purchased 26 acres, but 23 acres of the land we purchased has become 2 parks in Verona. We added 2 parks. We added another park years ago on Grove Avenue. So we're protecting this land. Years ago, we lacked environmental ordinances, but honestly, since I'm mayor, the first year we have a tree protection ordinance we put in place. Since we've had a flood control and prevention and a stormwater ordinance put in place. Right before I got on the council, a steep slope ordinance. So we should further define these ordinances and enforce them through our zoning ordinance, and it would make them more strict. We should also add green building practices for more sustainability. If we can get that in, and I think Verona would be a greener place. The proof that we were lacking resiliency, if you look at our 2020 flood control and prevention ordinance that was necessitated by FEMA, you can look at their new flood map they came out with a couple years ago and the areas of special flood hazards that have grown in Verona. But why is that? Because our storm systems in town are undersized. So that goes to infrastructure. The storms we have are more intense. We continue to pave more land. We are.
Thank you for your response, Mr. McAvoy.
Okay, give me a quick thumbs up if you guys can hear me all right. Awesome. Okay, now to our last survey-based question. What policies regarding housing opportunities would you support or want to implement in Verona? And the first person up is Michael Nachmanson.
So as far as housing goes, this community has I believe, a nice balance between single family homes and rental properties. I believe we have about 5,600 homes, single family homes, and roughly 2,000 apartments, which are rental. 500 of those are rent controlled. But I think that gives us a nice balance at something like 63% single family homes and 30% apartments. And why that's so important, because the fabric of this community are people who own homes. When you own a home, you make an investment in a community. Renting is fine, and we need renters, but when you rent, you're not as tied to a community. You don't pay direct taxes to the township. You're less connected, and that's really factual. I know there are some people talking about smart building, and to me, converting single family homes into 2-family and 3-family homes is really a disaster for a community. The last thing we need is to disrupt any of our neighborhood schools with more traffic, with more people. We are overstuffed in this community. Our roads in the morning are packed. Our streets are packed. Our schools don't have enough money. We don't need to expand schools. Our population is roughly.
Thank you, Mr. Knockomson. That's all. Thank you. That's all.
We're overdeveloped.
Thank you, Mr. Knockomson. That's it. That is time.
The fabric of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next person up is Miss Holland.
Thank you. And that's a really good question. So affordable housing and the need to provide a realistic opportunity for affordable housing has been the law in New Jersey for over 40 years, so longer than I've been alive, okay? And what we need to do is we need to address this in Verona's master plan. So I'm really excited that the council took action at the meeting the other night to really begin that process. Because what we want to avoid is the woeful situation that we found ourselves in under prior councils, where we hadn't planned for the future and we ended up at the mercy of developers frequently threatening litigation. What we need to do is have that plan, like I talked about earlier in my response to planning for the future, that really has our short-term and longer-term goals incorporated into it. We know that there's a fourth round coming. If we are planning for that in our master plan, we can ensure that we're doing so in an environmentally sustainable way. So we're not contributing to flooding our neighbors. We're not increasing traffic circulation. We are adequately funding our schools and ensuring that our community maintains its small town charm and characteristics that really brought us all here in the first place. And that's done with careful and thoughtful planning. It's not done with an ad hoc reactionary approach. Thank you.
Earl, you're next.
Thank you. First and foremost, I always want to ensure that Verona is a welcoming place for everybody, whether you're a homeowner or a renter. I was a renter in Verona for 10 years while serving as a teacher and a rescue squad member, being involved in local boards and emergency management. And I bought a house last year, and I was very proud to be able to save the money to do that and stay in the town that I teach in and that I love. I would like to include everybody as we go through and make sure that all opinions are represented. When we start talking about affordable housing, I think this is the question on people's minds. I think the township did a phenomenal job in acquiring the Chemical property and the Hokel property in order to develop an affordable housing area up there that is in an appropriate place and that is going to meet our requirements under law and under Supreme Court decisions. But while we do this, the town has done a great job, and this is something I would like to continue to see, in having open space. We have to balance that. We should not be building high density housing, whether it's affordable housing or not, in buffer zones, in areas that are very close to residential neighborhoods. We need to be able to maintain the charm and the beauty of Verona in that way. And as part of that, we do have requirements under the law, but we also need to be advocating for legislative solutions to, in many ways, legislative issues. Right now, we're kind of on the edge of LD 26. If we can get in and work with other municipalities having similar issues,
Dr. Tambaro, that's
big
it.
change.
Thank you. Next is Mr. McAvoy.
Need more than a minute and a half for this, but I'm going to go as quick as I can. I will say that prior councils were in line with our affordable housing mandate. And the first two rounds, the numbers were low. Hillwood Terrace had ample amount, and we were good on that. But as of now, Verona, with all the things we've done, we are in compliance with the fair share housing affordable numbers that they wanted. We're very close to settling the deal. In 2018, we did pass an ordinance that requires a set aside for all developers in Verona. And that requires that for every 5 units that are created, 1 affordable unit needs to be added as a set aside for affordable. The ordinance does not add affordable if it's less than 5 units. So people talked about a single family home here being turned into a 4-family home. That doesn't help us for our future mandate. Additionally, allowing a 4-family home in a single family neighborhood, we need expansion of building height. So you're going to be shadowing your neighbor. It increases land coverage for parking. It adds to traffic. It adds density in neighborhoods. It increases classroom sizes. These are some of the biggest complaints that I hear throughout town. But all this without creating affordable units. So this puts us in harm's way in the next round of affordable that's going to be coming up in 2025, when market rate housing increases and we don't add any affordable units to town. So that becomes a problem. So my idea is to focus on the town center, and for every mixed use development we put there, 1 story of retail, 2 stories of residential, and that's in a 3-story building. That's what our zoning code allows for.
Thank you, Mr. McAvoy. That's all.
Affordable
Thank
housing
you.
obligation in 25.
Your time is concluded. Thank you. Mr. Hyndman, you're next.
Thank you. So as a municipal attorney who deals directly with affordable housing compliance on behalf of other towns, who deals with redevelopment issues, planning, zoning issues, I'm intimately familiar with how this process plays out across the state in communities like Verona, in communities that are different than Verona. I know how Fair Share Housing Center operates, what their goals and objectives are. I've had to negotiate across the table from them. So I've got the experience to put Verona in the best position possible when it comes to complying with our affordable housing obligations, which are ongoing. We are in compliance or on the way to compliance now. But the process is going to start all over again with a new set of numbers that we don't know yet, because it will probably have to be litigated. So you need someone on the council who understands deeply these issues. I also want to address something in regards to the makeup of Verona and its housing types, its renters types. And there was a conflation between single family homes and rentals. Single family is a housing type. It's not a rental or ownership type. There are plenty of single family homes that are rental properties. There are plenty of multifamily homes that are owned. I mean, they're called condos. It happens all the time, and they're very common in this community. So when we talk about zoning for different housing types, it doesn't necessarily mean regulating people. Like I said, 25%.
Thank you, Mr. Hyndman. Your time is up. Thank you. Our next and final question from us is, why are you running for town council? Ms. Holland, you're first.
Hi, I'm running for town council because I think I'd be really good at it, and I think that I bring assets that are valuable to the town. It's pretty simple. I bring a lot of experienced leadership. I've worked for the 3 governors. I've worked on these statewide energy master plans. I've chaired bar association committees. And I really feel like those are skill sets that'll help us. I have demonstrated strategic planning abilities, having worked on the Global Warming Response Act report and the Energy Master Plan, and led some of the discussions with local governments about how they can address climate change. I have practical implementation expertise because in my government regulator roles, I've actually had to do that. I've had to implement large policy at a statewide, regional, and sometimes even a national level, and really be engaged in that discussion. I think I can bring that skill to Verona and really help us move forward by ensuring that our ordinances are consistent with a thoughtful and detailed and environmentally sustainable municipal master plan. And I also really feel like I can help us build community resilience. I've been an active and engaged volunteer at both the school. I lead 2 Daisy Girl Scout troops. I've gone to town council meetings for years. And I really feel like I can help us to open and really be engaged as a community again after COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holland. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Ms. Holland. Dr. Tamburo, you're up.
So when I first applied for my teaching job here in Verona 13 years ago, I had to look at where Verona was on a map. And I admit that. I'm not a hillbilly born, but I'm a hillbilly made. 2 years after I started working here, I moved into town because I loved it so much, and rented for 10 years, saved up money to buy a house. This is the place I love and the place that I love to serve. In addition to being an educator, I've been able to serve on the rescue squad, work with our emergency management office, which through its preparation and great people like Joel Martin and Matt Cavallo and Chris Kiernan, we had probably the best prepared town in the COVID response. Other towns were following our example. This is a wonderful place to be. Being involved in the government showed what we can do when we work together. Been able to be an advocate for a lot of people in various different roles in this town, and people find me to be a natural resource. I want to make sure that I can be a resource for more people. I think this is a natural step, something people have asked me to do because I think I'd be good at it. And I can bring my experience as a longtime resident, as an educator, as a consultant on matters related to government in order to keep Verona progressing in a way that we're an exemplar for other towns while representing all different types of people, like those that I've met through being a teacher and being on the rescue squad and being a renter and being a homeowner.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. McAvoy, you're up next.
Thank you. Why am I running? Why did I run? The question goes back to my opening statement. I ran because I was worried about the future of Verona. I was worried by the lack of environmental ordinances that it had and what that can do to the makeup land-wise in Verona, seeing high-rise buildings, seeing companies come in and wanting to blast on a piece of property that was 1.5 acres for 9 to 12 months. I thought it was ridiculous. So that was my push to run for council. And I think over the last 4 years, I've shown the township that my heart is in it. Whether I'm born and bred here or whether, as Chris Tamboro just said, you're here for 10 years, it doesn't matter. I hear people talk about old and new Verona. There's one Verona. It's whether you're here 1 day, 1 year, or 100 years, it doesn't matter. We're all the same. My heart is into it. My background is in construction. And another reason why I looked at running was I attended council meetings for 5 or 6 years prior. And a lot of the ordinances and a lot of things that the council votes on, we spend money repairing all these buildings and looking at it. When we did the library over, I'd go in on a regular basis, look what's going on, look over invoices, look over the billing, and helped out, in that aspect. So I think that's a big asset that I bring to the town. And I talk to the residents and I really pay attention.
Thank you, Mr. McAvoy.
Thank you.
Next is Mr. Heineman.
Thank you. So as I said before in my opening, when my wife and I moved here, we really fell in love with Verona, the small town charm, the warm community. And I can't agree anymore with what Mayor McAvoy said about this being one Verona. We fell in love with this town. It was so welcoming. It was so warm. And that's why I'm getting involved. And that's why I want to be a part of the town council. Growing up, my parents, they always instilled in me the importance of putting others' needs before my own. So when I know that I can help out in some way, I have a really hard time saying no. And I know at this critical juncture in the community where we have our master plan coming up, where we have another round of affordable housing to prepare for, given my expertise and my perspective, I think I can bring a lot to the table. I can add to the council, which is a 5-member legislative body. It needs different perspectives. It needs different expertise so that as one cohesive unit, we're stronger than the sum of the parts. You're not electing one person this election, you're electing 3. It's got to be 3 people that can work together with the other 2 council members to really innovate, to really oversee and manage Verona appropriately. And I think you need expertise in various different fields for a functioning council. And that's why I'm running, because I think I bring something special to the table.
Thank you, Mr. Heineman. Mr. Nachumsen, you're up.
Thank you very much. I always like to say this is the house we build together, and basically the calendar is in our hands. And the ideas that I have really change how people see reality. And I bring to the table vision, action, and results. I put together a plan, which we call it #LiveVerona. We're talking about remaking the downtown, enhancing it, embracing our anchors, the 8 Hills, Mealy's, Clinton Glass, some of the people that have been here for years, we're talking about enhancing what they've spent so much time doing. We're talking about rebuilding, energizing, remaking, and welcoming other people to Verona. But the only way to do it is for the township to spend money. And I have an actual plan to do it. I've modeled it. We've created a concept, designs. We talk about walking and rolling Verona. We talk about eating Verona. We're adopting Shop Verona, but we talk about enjoy Verona. And what that means is clean sidewalks, no weeds, straight meters, big belly solar garbage cans, a 4-face clock, seasonal banners that are ever changing. It's welcoming, lighting the downtown, the town square with LED lighting that's subtle, that changes during the season. If it's breast cancer awareness, it's pink. During Christmas, it's Christmas colors. But it's a place where people will be gathering. It becomes a magnet when people
Thank you, Mr. Nachmanson, your time is up.
They see that
Thank you,
Verona
your
is a
time is
place
up.
they want to invest. So
Thank you, Mr.
that's
Nachmanson, your time has concluded.
I think it benefits everyone in Verona. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. That is all for our prepared questions, and we will now have questions from the audience.
So community members were invited to submit questions prior to and during tonight's forum. Our candidate responses are going to be limited to 1 minute. The rotation of the order is going to continue, beginning with Dr. Tamburo. Our technical host, Madrid, who's been monitoring the questions coming in, is going to be asking the questions from here on out.
Our first question is, when we discuss affordable housing in town council meetings, there is a lot of anxiety that comes up regarding those moving into this housing. How will you as a council member address this to ensure Verona is a safe, accepting place for people living in affordable housing? It is a very expensive place. It is very expensive to live in Verona. How do you plan to make sure that the people living in affordable housing can afford to live here? For example, access to affordable food, transportation, daycare, etc.
Dr. Tamburo, you're up first.
Thank you. It is a great question. First of all, I think it's really important that we don't have any kind of stigma attached with affordable housing. People living in affordable housing can be young professionals. They can be people working in construction. I know a lot of people kind of use the classic example as, a teacher in Verona could qualify for affordable housing in a lot of our early salary steps as well. So I think the first thing is making sure that we're talking about not people who live in affordable housing developments, but everybody in Verona. And we have people throughout town that are all in different types of socioeconomic classes as we go. So I think it's really important to make sure that we have that we welcome everybody, that we provide resources. When I bought a home in town, I didn't get any kind of welcome packet. And I would like to make sure that we have more contact, to provide resources, to have a business directory so we can reach people, to provide incentives when somebody moves in, coupons and things like that, so that we can include more people in and make people feel like home right away, and get them participating in.
Thank you, Dr. Tamburo, that's all. Next is Mr. McAvoy.
I got to start off by saying to Madrid, I don't believe that when we discuss it at council meetings, people are against the people moving into the affordable housing. I do agree we don't want to put a stigma on it. I think what the people are feeling when they're up there and you're listening to people calling into council meetings, I think it's more that people are against the development as a whole. They're against the issue, the problems that come with any large building going anywhere. We hear from people constantly in Verona talking about traffic. So that's probably one of the main reasons. We hear from the school teachers, we hear from the Board of Education, the problem with how many students are going to be coming into the schools as a result of putting in this much housing anywhere, whether it's affordable 95 units at Cameco or 200 units at Spectrum. I think that's what might be getting misinterpreted. I think they're really against the development as a whole. As far as you asked a question about the access to food and affordable food, I am all for
Thank you, Mr. McAvoy. That's all.
that would be suitable for that.
Thank you, Mr. McAvoy. Your time has concluded. We will now be moving on to Mr. Hindman.
Thank you. So I think just to echo what Mayor McAvoy said, there is not as much outright objection to affordable housing per se in this last round, like it was in previous iterations. Again, it's the density, it's the development that most residents object to, partially because of education, partially because they know that this is something that's been around for a while. So let's stick to the direct zoning impacts. And that's why I'm highlighting a comprehensive approach to meeting our affordable housing mandates. Being an affordable housing attorney, I know all of the different tools available, that tools that often go overlooked because municipalities are scrambling to get those units guaranteed. You know, tools like encouraging 2 to 4 unit multifamily rentals, tools like direct rental subsidies. What those
Thank you, Mr.
do
Hindman.
is
Your time is up. Thank you. Mr. Knockomson, you're up.
Thank you, Audrey. I think, and I know this almost as a fact, that the low income and affordable confusion is sometimes just out of ignorance. People assume that affordable is low income, and I catch people often and I have to correct them that affordable, if I could qualify, it would be a great opportunity. And as Chris Tamburo mentioned, teachers, professionals starting out, these are opportunities for them to join our community and live in an affordable housing complex. Verona's done a great job. And again, the mayor and myself were very instrumental in coordinating those 95 units with Jerry Pearl of Cameco and putting all 95 units, which is highly unusual. But we did that to save our community, because what that allowed us to do is reduce 400 units being developed somewhere else. And we talked about this earlier. The affordable, we think, is a burden on Verona, and no one from the state has ever visited Verona and driven the streets. But we are overdeveloped in this town.
Thank you, Mr. Knockomson.
Our
That's all.
schools.
Thank you, Mr. Knockomson. Your time is concluded. Ms. Holland, you're next.
Thanks. I think this question, or really both of the questions, come down to community resilience and inclusivity. So it's about ensuring residents are welcomed, but also seen and heard as they come into this community. When I moved here, there actually was a welcome packet, and I think it used to even be on the township's website. But the reality is it likely needs updating, and I think it would be an excellent idea to include, references to our local businesses. But as to the affordable housing and access to food, I really think that that's a part of the master plan process. So let's identify who we want to be as Verona. Do we want that walkable town center? That's what brought my family here. And I do walk to the end of my street to buy milk. But let's take an intentional approach and incorporate that into our master plan. I really feel like that's how we can ensure that we have this access and best serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holland.
Our second question is, gender discrimination in the workplace is a local issue in Verona that needs to be addressed. Our town settled 2 gender discrimination lawsuits in November of 2020. Settlements were paid costing $500,000. 2 female employees alleged not only pay disparity, but also retaliation. What measures need to be taken to assure female employees are compensated equally?
First is Mr. McAvoy.
Okay. First, I have to say, because I am a sitting mayor of Verona and on the council when those lawsuits were settled, I can't comment directly on them. And this is the problem, that people will twist that around and say I'm not being transparent, but it's a legal issue and we can't say anything about it. But I will say overall, Verona's hiring process is an open and fair, and it is compliant with New Jersey's law against discrimination. Verona's taken the right steps insofar as implementing the law and addressing equal pay for the employees that work in the township. So, I mean, there's probably two parts to it. There's the employees and equal pay for job and contract postings. As far as the employees go, you mentioned 2018, the Diane B. Allen Equal Pay Act was signed into law. The manager has since, right after that, reviewed all of our employees and assured us that they're all being paid equally. I have to note that 85%.
Thank you, Mr. McAvoy. Your time is up.
And they're under.
Thank you, Mr. McAvoy. Your time is up. Next is Mr. Heineman.
Thank you. It's important to remember that Verona is a civil service community, so there are strict guidelines dictating how employees are hired, their salary increases. We also have public employee contracts that are negotiated. So when we look at these legal frameworks that are already in place, it's important to, as Mr. McAvoy noted, that our BEA has reviewed the Diane B. Allen Equal Pay Act and is ensuring compliance with these legal requirements. But in areas where we do have discretion, it's important to look at our employees holistically, look at the entire employee workforce, and not just narrow in on specific employee types, because that's where we run into trouble because of systemic and economic factors where certain classes of people are funneled into certain roles. So in order to proactively avoid that, we should look holistically at our employees and weigh how we're compensating them.
Thank you, Mr. Heineman. Mr. Nachumsen?
Thank you very much. I always look at hiring people. We don't look at gender. We don't look at race. We look at the merits and the character and the qualifications of the individual. And as far as I know, Verona's done a fairly good job hiring. We have made mistakes in the past, but not many people have ever leave Verona jobs. They're here forever. They start and they retire here. And there's a reason why, is because it's a great job. They get paid well, their total comp, their days off, and it's really a nice community to work for. So every so often you will have an issue, and sometimes that can be a personnel issue, but I think Verona does a great job. And so we also have to just consider that as long as we're hiring on merit, equal opportunity doesn't mean equal outcome. And Verona does a great job. And since I got on the council and Jack was on the council, all jobs are posted. Before we got on the council, we had jobs that were quietly offered to people, but postings are transparent. They're open.
Thank you, Mr. Nachumsen. Your time is up.
Very fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Holland?
Thank you. I agree. Salaries should really be based on skills and ability. Despite the fact that gender-based discrimination has been illegal since 1963, it remains a stubborn issue for women. And I will say, as a woman, a working mother, especially in male-dominated professions like law and utilities and engineering, it is a consistent problem. It's something that I have seen firsthand, and I've even had to have my salary adjusted because it's been identified that women were underpaid versus our male colleagues. I recognize that two brave women stood up in Verona, and I'm happy that they achieved the settlement they did. As a taxpayer in this town, as a resident, I feel like it was really unfortunate that we had to go through that. But as a working mom with two daughters, I'm really proud of them for doing so. And I sincerely hope that Verona has learned a lesson and that we improve going forward so that we never have to endure that again. And if elected, I'll be one of two females on the council. So hopefully that'll be a positive step toward equal representation for women. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Tambero, you're up.
Thank you. As a consultant on labor matters, I deal with issues of compensation and equity quite a bit. As part of that, I negotiate labor contracts, and a good portion of our population, about I think 85% of our staff, I believe Mayor McAvoy had alluded to earlier, are covered by collective bargaining agreements. They're covered by union contracts. And something I've been able to do as a consultant through the bargaining process is work with the party on the other side of the table to solve problems together. And this is something that the unions can work with the town administration on. While we don't negotiate the contracts as councilmen, we can support the manager in doing that. So I think that's one certain thing to do. The next is, with anything else, the government needs to be transparent. Our records need to be available. They should be on the website before people have to request them. And what that does is allows people to feel comfortable that we are meeting our burden to make sure that people are being paid for the job they're doing and they're being paid equitably. Thank you.
Thank you. Madrid, next question.
This will be our third and final question. I apologize if you haven't gotten to yours. We got many, many questions. Our last question will be, as a VHS graduate and having been raised in Verona, under your leadership as a council member, why would I consider relocating back to Verona in 2021?
Mr. Hindman, you'll be the first to respond.
Thank you. So again, that question dovetails into what I spoke about earlier about making Verona affordable for all types of people. You know, people, our kids, they leave and then they can't come back until they're earning higher incomes or already started a family. So when we have a diverse range of housing types so that our kids can come back to our community, so we're not nudging out our retirees and senior residents when they're no longer at their peak earning age. So I think that Verona has a lot to offer. We've got a walkable community. We've got a warm, welcoming community. We have a nice downtown, and we have access to a lot of the amenities that young people like to have. But the key is to make Verona accessible so young people can come back and live on their own.
Thank you, Mr. Hindman. Mr. Knockomson, your response?
So my response is we're constantly helping kids get into college and kids leaving college get jobs. And I would love to welcome them back into town. And the goal is if we can rebuild our downtown and we can improve the downtown with good building, with good businesses, and really with the investment by the township, in a couple of years, money attracts money. And people will come back and say, you know what, I'm going to open up my accounting office in Verona. I'm going to be an attorney and have my office on the third floor of a building in Verona. I am going to invest in a business and risk real capital, but I'm going to open it in Verona. Why? Because Verona's invested in Verona, and Verona has adopted a plan to make the downtown more spectacular than any town around us. So we become an attractive magnet, and it attracts people. It attracts our kids back to town. It attracts businesses, and it makes the community more vibrant. This is real action. We're not talking about generalities. We're talking about how business operates and how the velocity of money transmits
Your time is concluded.
through a community. So that's how we have to do
Your
it.
time is
Thank
up.
you.
Cynthia Holland. Miss Cynthia Holland, you're next.
Thank you. I'm in this to build a better Verona. And why am I doing that? Because I have two daughters and my oldest is 10 years old. So 10 years from now, when we'd be re-examining the master plan that we're hoping to begin now, that's when she's going to be the one looking to come back. And I'd really like that to be to a better Verona, one that's realizing a more sustainable future. And it's realizing that through planning. So we've taken that active step to plan for the future. We've implemented the short, medium, and long-term goals, and we're realizing a healthier community for her and potentially for her children and my grandchildren, so that I can have that same benefit that so many of you have, where you're here for generations. I really want to ensure that we're doing careful implementation so that as we improve our downtown, we're doing it in a sustainable way that recognizes our infrastructure and continues to improve, and that we maintain our community and ensure that we have open and continued dialogue among our neighbors so that we're inclusive and ultimately a better Verona. Thank you.
Dr. Timbiera, your response.
So the first reason that you should come back is that I will still be here. And I want to see you. And I want to teach your kids. Not your grandkids, because I do want to be retired by then. But I do want to teach your kids, okay? I hope that you will see that you'll come back, because the Verona community spirit only gets stronger every day. We saw this during COVID when people were helping one another. We had civic organizations that were providing meals to local residents, supporting the rescue squad and the police department, the fire department. This is a place where we exemplify values that everybody should want in their lives and the lives of their children. This can also be a place that, as we involve more people, we have a 5-member governing body, we have 14,000 people. We need to find ways to involve more people through strategic planning, through getting people involved. And I hope that you'll see that this is a place that you'll come back to and be involved in planning to keep Verona the same wonderful place you grew up in.
Thank you, Dr. Timbiero. Mr. McAvoy, you're next.
So why come back? I'd like to know whether this person graduated 5 years or 50 years ago. But I will say this, old Verona is new Verona. That's why I hate people saying old versus new Verona. Verona, to me, is exactly the same now as when I grew up in Verona. And that was a long time ago, 50 years. But I will say this, there's nothing changed. There might be a couple different buildings. Unfortunately, some businesses went out, like Verona Sports Center or Terry's Drugs, which I miss because I went in there quite often. But you can still come to Verona. You can still walk in the beautiful Verona Park. We have made Verona a lot more greener than when you were here. Like I said earlier, we've added 3 parks, Grove, Peckman, Mount Prospect. We have Hilltop. We now have the railroad track that is another type of a park. These things weren't there when we were little, but we did go on them, probably illegally if you were that old. But take a walk in Verona. It's going to be pretty much exactly the same. You can stop at Lakeside Deli and grab the same Sloppy Joe, but I would welcome you back. And if you have affordability problems, we're adding affordable housing in the very, very, very near future.
Thank you, Mr. McAvoy.
Again, I just want to reiterate, thank you so much to every audience member who put in questions. We got so many and they were so great, but unfortunately, we are running out of time. So we will now have closing statements from the candidates for 1 minute each, starting with, starting with Dr. Timbiero.
Thank you. First, thank you to the VYV who put on a phenomenal forum tonight. And I also want to thank the other candidates. I've said from the beginning of this race, I'm not running against anybody for council. I'm running for Verona. And I appreciate your honest answers, which demonstrates that there's a lot of possibility for teamwork as we move forward. I hope that I will get one of your 3 votes. I hope that you will see that I can continue to be an advocate and a resource for everybody in Verona and work to expand people's engagement in government through unity, prosperity, accountability, and transparency, which have been my platform since the beginning of the campaign. Because we don't have a lot of time tonight, I hope that you'll visit my website, tamboroforcouncil.com, to learn more. Feel free to call me, email me, reach out on social media, come at an event, because I'd like to talk to everybody here more. Thank you for the 100 people who joined us for this great forum.
Sorry about that. Got a weird notification on my computer. Anyway, Mr. McAvoy, you're up next.
Yes, I'm not going to read my prepared statement because seeing this go on tonight, I'm just going to say thank you to all the young adults that put this together, the job you did. And I was thinking yesterday preparing for this that in my 4 years on the council, and I also mentioned earlier, like I was at meetings 5-6 years prior, never missed a meeting. In all those years, we never had any young adults step up to the microphone, address a problem they had, or want to address an issue. And back in August, I know Madrid and Audrey came in, addressed the council, myself, the manager and the police chiefs went on a Zoom with them. I know they went and visited the police station, but hats off to you. The only other people that came in there were people getting awards in your age group. So I was very impressed and even more impressed that you did this. I hope you guys stay involved and keep in touch with the council even after this is all over. So thank you. Please vote for me on May 11th. 4A. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McAvoy and Mr. Hyman.
Thank you to the VYV for organizing this and to my fellow candidates for participating. I'm excited and I'm ready to serve as your next council person. I bring unique experience and perspective to the council that will help us move forward in a smart, strategic, and environmentally sustainable way that also respects Verona's history and charm. My experience on the council means stronger advocacy for alternatives to high density redevelopments like Spectrum and Cameco, deals that are negotiated in executive session without much public input. It means safer roads that are easier to walk, run, bike, because we proactively planned for all types of mobility. It means stronger local businesses and an invigorated downtown because we prioritize customer access and convenience. I'm grateful for the opportunity to hear from all of you tonight. Please visit jasonforverona.com to see my full platform and social channels. I hope you'll vote for me for one of the 3 council seats and consider joining my campaign and helping us share my message with your friends and neighbors on and offline. Remind them to vote May 11th because every voice matters and every vote counts. Thank you again.
Thank you. Mr. Nachumsen, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, young voters of Verona. This was a great forum. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my excitement for Verona and our entire community. I look forward to bringing back downtown Verona and making Verona the place to be once again. I look to improve the experience for all Verona residents. I have a real plan. We're not talking again in generalities, but we're talking about Shop Verona. We're talking about Eat Verona. We're talking about Walk and Roll Verona, but overall, we're talking about Enjoy Verona. And unless we invest, our town is going to remain a sea-level downtown. And we have the opportunity to turn it around. And I have a plan to do it and the energy. So please exercise your right to vote on May 11th, Nachumsen 5A. Go to nachumsen.com and some of the stuff you'll see is real, concise plans, designs. We just need to implement it, but everyone will benefit and the walking experience will be magical. I promise you, it's doable and it's around the corner. I apologize for going over time limits earlier, but thank you for running this forum. We appreciate it. And thank you to all the other candidates for attending. Have a
Thank
great
you,
night.
Mr. Nachumsen. Thank you. Ms. Holland?
Yes, thank you, Viv. Thank you, League of Women Voters. This has been a tremendous event, and I have to applaud you guys because I was not nearly this civically engaged when I was your age. So massive kudos. Thank you to all the other candidates. I think what the residents of Verona can see, what I can see is that you have a number of amazing options, and I really sincerely hope that I am one of them. You have 3 votes on May 11th. I am your ballot line 1A candidate, and I'm offering experienced leadership for a better Verona. I believe we can achieve this through careful planning, sustainable implementation, and really strengthening our community resilience coming out of COVID. You can learn more about my campaign by visiting Holland for Verona and hollandforverona.com and following my different social channels on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you again for this tremendously successful event, and just really have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Holland. And that concludes candidates night. Thank you to the League for working with Viv on such an informative event, and to the candidates for taking the time to attend tonight. And most of all, thank you to the community for registering and asking some amazing questions, many of which we unfortunately didn't have time to ask. A recording of tonight's forum will be sent out to all registrants shortly. It will be available on the League's YouTube channel as well.
And thank you so much to all the young members of this community who actually did give so much support to Madrid and I when we started this. We really had no idea how much amazing support we would get. We knew that this was needed in our town. We knew that we needed to get youth more involved, but we didn't know how many people actually wanted it. So thank you so much for being engaged. And remember, the polls open at 6 a.m. on May 11th. Please feel free to follow @Verona's Young Voters on Instagram for more information on the election. Thank you all again and have a great night.